They open up with Florida. That'll be a loss. They might get by with Florida A&M. Oops. Ball State. Man, what a non-con schedule these guys have. South Florida. So I think you'll be 1-4 here. Virginia Tech, you get them at Miami. They're on the up and up, though. We'll come back to that one. Cal, you should be able to get one up on. Loss. Duke, you should beat. There's another loss when you come to Atlanta. Wake Forest and Syracuse. What a sissy soft schedule y'all have. Y'all's schedule's almost as soft as North Carolina's is. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you're losing to Virginia Tech too. There's 5 losses for you. You'll struggle to be bowl eligible this year. And you'll be like, but we got all this talent though. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone is having a fantastic night. A little bit of a short weekend. Heading into Thursday tomorrow. The week is flying by. We got FAMU this weekend. But, man, we're really excited about the guests we have on. A lot of people, if you're on social media, you know this individual. He's kind of like a brother to us, Ross, in the sense, like a half brother. We only see them once. We only see TJ once a year, but when we do, it's probably during Thanksgiving. We don't really want to talk to him, but you know what? Sometimes we just have to, right? Right? Sometimes we just have to. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Scoop, TJ Pittinger. TJ, welcome to the Lions Den, my friend.
What's up, guys? Yeah, that's a nicer intro than I thought I was going to get. I was like, man, all right, we're off to a good start.
No, but genuinely, TJ. I mean, look, I got to give you a lot of credit. You're coming on enemy territory. The Noles started off 0-2 to start the season. I think it takes a lot of balls to come on the Scoop. Starting off the season 0-2. So really do appreciate you taking time out of your night.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm happy to do it. I almost said I'm not happy to do it, but no, I really am happy to do it. Like at the end of the day, they're not playing well. They're not doing well, and we'll break all that down and talk about it. But I mean, I talk about it on YouTube every day anyway, and so I'm not going to run. I got to log in one way or the other. So maybe you guys can help dry my tears a little bit.
TJ, coming into the season, no doubt about it, Florida State Seminoles, top 10 team in the nation, preseason ranked. Tough loss against Georgia Tech. I mean, if the ball, the way I see it, Florida State could be 2-0, they could be 1-1, or they could be 0-2 right now, right? That's just how college football is. Where's kind of the fan base feeling right now with the Florida State Seminoles after these 2 losses? Because, I'll be honest, I didn't expect this. I know Ross didn't expect this. I know probably the heavy majority of the college football world did not expect this either.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of in shock. I think they feel like they've been. I was talking to somebody about this earlier. They've been kind of punched in the mouth, and both the team and the fan base just feels like shock. Like the Georgia Tech thing, like you could say, like, oh, okay, well, Dublin. You're playing international, you were in it, like if you pick up one fumble, you win that game. Like you didn't get like blown out, dominated. And then like for BC to turn around and like not a good BC team. Georgia Tech was a team on the rise. You were, that one, I feel like people were annoyed, but like, okay, well, come out and dominate BC, and then we'll move on. To really just get dominated by BC and them control the line of scrimmage. I mean, they outrushed you by over 200 yards. Like that is the one where I think fans are kind of in panic mode. And honestly, I don't know if panic mode's the right word. It's almost just like, well, that's that. Like that's the year. Obviously we want to beat both rivals. Yeah, we would love to go on a streak and win the next 10 games. Like, yeah, that'd be amazing to finish 10-2. But I mean, realistically, this team's not going to go to the ACC championship now. I mean, it would be need to be a lot of chaos. And I think it'd be pretty tough. I mean, if they won the next 10 games and Miami was a top 10 team and Notre Dame was a top 10 team and maybe somebody else has had a really good year, then maybe they could but they're not going to sneak into the playoff. Like they're not going to win the next 10 games. And so I think it's just realization. Like it's like the 5 stages of grief, right? Like it's acceptance of like, well, we'll try again next year. I almost think like that's where it's at. And so now you still want to beat Miami. You still want to beat Florida. You'd love to. I mean, you want to win every game on the schedule. But I do think it is already acceptance of like, well, this just team wasn't it, and we'll try again next time.
It's an interesting situation Florida State's in right now, right? You know, the off season, I don't think DJ Youngalele was their first priority choice. I think Cam Ward was, because he did take the visit to Florida State after he visited Miami. Obviously, he ended up at the University of Miami. What's the optimism around taking in, DJ from the transfer portal? Maybe there was some NIL in back of it to get him into Florida State, but do you think the fan base and the team has left DJ as the quarterback? Are they looking for the next man up? What's going on in the program right now?
Yeah, there's nobody that's more popular on a bad team than the backup quarterback, right? Whether he's capable or not. Yeah, I mean, I think the fan base wants to see a change, and they feel like, in game one, so against Georgia Tech, they felt like Mike didn't trust DJ, and that was apparent. Like, we just weren't throwing the ball very much. I thought they could just run their way to a win. But in game two, like, DJ was pretty poor. Although I think we had 6 or 7 drops based on, which kind of site you're citing. And so, like, his receiver certainly didn't help him out either. And so, but yeah, I mean, the crowd was out there chanting, "We want Brock." Brock Glenn, the redshirt, the redshirt freshman who was the quarterback during the ACC championship game. Like, I think they want to move on to him. I'm not quite ready to do that just yet. Like, I think there's a reason that DJ's starting. I don't necessarily think Brock is ready. But if you were to lose, so they have a bye week and they play Memphis. If you were to lose to Memphis, I think at that point it would be time to move on. I think at that point you'd say, like, well, if we can't beat Memphis, if we can't beat a group of 5 team, how many Power 5 teams are we going to beat? Like, we might as well just get guys experience for next year. So I'm not ready to get there yet, but I do think there's a large portion of the fan base that's ready to just call it quits and move on somewhere else.
TJ, I'm just curious, how long do you think the FSU fan base will give DJ that opportunity, to kind of, build his way into the system or not build his way into the system? What do you think?
I mean, like I said, I think there's a large portion of the fan base that already wants to move on, that already wants to kind of move on to another
early.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, okay, so, but like with this 1-year rental stuff, right? Like, yeah. I mean, same thing for you guys. If Cam would have come out and thrown 3 picks in the swamp, right? And then he came out and followed that up by, like, just being terrible against FAMU, and say you lost that game or something, right? Like, I obviously realize that that's pretty unlikely. And, like, the season was at that point, like, you have a loss to Florida and you have a loss to FAMU, right? And you're like, okay, well, if we can't beat FAMU, we're probably not going to beat Florida State and Virginia Tech and all these other teams. We might as well just get the young guys experience for next year, right? So if it's a sophomore quarterback that you're going to have on your roster for 2 more years, it's different. But when you do this 1-year portal thing, which is fine, a lot of places have done it. A lot of places have had success. Like, it's not a bad thing to do, but it makes it to where, well, once that season is over, that 1-year rental just, why are you going to stick with them when what you really need to do is be ready for the future once your year's over? Now, nobody expected Florida State's year to be over in week 1. And so that's kind of why it probably feels a little bit early.
Do you feel there's a quarterback behind him that could step in possibly throughout the season and change things?
That's where my hesitation to replace him lies. I don't necessarily think so. I don't think Brock Glenn comes in and changes too much from a competitive standpoint, from a talent standpoint. Brock Glenn played in the ACC championship last year. He played in the Orange Bowl, but I mean, he was hurt for like 3/4 of the year with a broken hand. And the only games he played in because of that were the ACC championship and then the Orange Bowl. And so, he's not even really like a true, like, redshirt freshman, like a redshirt freshman that's like taking all the snaps that they normally would get. He didn't get take any snaps through the year. And that's why they ran the Wildcat in the ACC championship. And so, like, I don't think he's ready. Luke Kromenhawk, who I think is the number 33 overall player, like, he's 1 away from being a 5-star, incredible talent. I think he's got a super high ceiling. He could be a 1st or 2nd round draft pick in 3 or 4 years, like in that time. I mean, he's been on campus for like 7 months, I don't know that I'm throwing him out there. And so, yeah, I don't think there's a quarterback on the roster right now that you put in and they just automatically increase the win totals. Now, we've seen crazy stories. People probably would have said the same thing about Tom Brady back in the day, right? And so I'm not saying, but I'm not saying that we have a Tom Brady on this team by any means. But I would my guess would be that DJ is probably your best bet to win games at this point.
I feel that is a fair assumption. How do you feel, Paul?
I mean, he's got an incredible story in the sense of his beginning to college football. He played an outstanding game against Notre Dame. It was an empty stadium in South Bend, obviously, during the pandemic season. And then, it kind of just went downhill from there at Clemson. He goes to Oregon State, does a lot better. So I thought this was going to give a breath of fresh air, to DJ going to Florida State, going back into the ACC. I thought, Florida State was going to be 9-3 this year, right? I feel like that was a fair season prediction. 9-3, 10-2, right? I'm not going to be perfect on my prediction, but I thought they were going to have a successful season. But at this point, I think transferring from 3 different colleges, right, different OCs, I think mentally something's off. Something's off with DJ Uiagalelei. It's that rip and replace, plug and player. Like you mentioned, TJ, what if Cam Ward throws 3 interceptions his first game, right? It's a new program, new OC, maybe it doesn't click. I want to talk about, going back to that situation when Cam Ward visited Miami, TJ. I'm sure, you're pretty close to the Florida State program. Was there optimism? Was Cam Ward that guy Florida State wanted? Did the staff think he was going to come to Miami? Can we go back to that offseason when Cam Ward visited Tallahassee and what was going through the coaching staff's mind and people tied to the program?
Yeah, I think that Florida State at that time thought that they had a pretty decent chance with Cam Ward. I think that they knew. You mentioned the NIL with DJ. I think they knew that Miami was going pretty all in on him, and that it was going to be a battle, a fight. I think the biggest thing with Cam and why he didn't end up at Florida State, though, was like, if you remember back to when that was happening, Florida State had just gotten snubbed from the playoffs, right? They were fighting the ACC to get out. The fan base was melting down before portal yet. And in years past, we were landing Jared Verse and Jermaine John. Like, we were killing it in the portal. And this year was a lot slower. And so I don't think, and then you remember what happened with Cam. Cam declared for the draft and said, I'm gonna test those waters. Now he didn't go as far as waiving his rights to be able to come back. But he, at that point, he said, I'm going to go do this. And even Miami even took the Reese kid from, was it from Albany? Is that where he played? Up there with Jared Verse. And so, I think at that point, Florida State said, okay, we can't, he might come back to college. He might not go to the NFL, but we can't get to that timeline and not have a quarterback in place that we can start to build around. And so to me, now, say they hadn't done that, they might have still lost the battle to Miami. I'm not saying that they were a lock or anything like that. But I don't think they were even willing to dance because I don't think they were willing to wait for that long. And they felt like they had a capable quarter. I think they preferred Ward, right? I don't think that's any kind of secret. Certainly the better quarterback from every perspective looking in. But I thought they had a guy. I think they thought they had a guy that was pretty capable, could do what they wanted, could hand the ball off, could Mike Norvell could coach him better than anybody else had. And so that's why I think they said, you know what, we're not going to wait to see what Ward does. He may come back, he may not. He may come back and we may lose him. We'll take DJ. We're comfortable with that. We'll start working with him now in January. I think he committed on January 1st. We'll start working with him in January. We'll have him ready to go by August. Now, obviously, that didn't work out super well, but I think that was Florida State's thinking more so. I don't think they wanted to wait for Ward.
TJ, you were at the Swamp on Saturday. You were able to see, the Canes take on the Gators. Kind of jealous, right? That's a great environment, great venue to be in. Going into the game, what were your thoughts? I actually saw your video. It wasn't biased. I mean, it was pretty neutral, right? I don't even think you made a prediction in one of your earlier videos. You're like, hey, this is up in the air. I don't know who's going to win this game. You're going, whether Miami, Florida, I don't know. It can go either way.
Yeah.
Miami takes care of business. what were your overall thoughts about the game?
Yeah, I had a hard time seeing Florida be able to win the game. Now, could that, I didn't think it was like a surefire thing, but I just thought Miami's defensive line would be too much against Florida's offensive line. Like I thought that was the matchup of the game. Honestly, it didn't end up being the matchup of the game. Like you guys just dominated every matchup. But that to me, that was going to be what kept Florida from winning. Like in a close game, I couldn't trust their offensive line to move Miami's front seven, which I think is their. I was pretty consistent with saying I thought Miami's front seven was just as good as anybody else's in the conference, just as good as Florida State's, just as good as Clemson's, whoever. Well, better than Florida State's because I don't like our linebackers very much. But yeah, so I thought that for sure Miami's front would kind of maul Florida. I didn't expect Graham Mertz to be as bad as he was, and I didn't expect Ward to be as good as he was. I did think that the swamp, and I don't think I was as drinking the Kool-Aid as much as the Gator fans were. I did think the swamp would play a bigger factor. And I've been in big games there. I've been in top 5 games there. I was there in 2015 at the largest sellout they've ever had. I've been at big games there. I was there when top 5 Auburn came in, and that was a 3:30 game. And the swamp was insane that day. But here's the thing about the swamp. They only cheer if you give them something to cheer for. Like they're not just loud when you're down by 30. Like they're great fans. They do a great job of showing up. I expect him to still show up fairly well against Samford this weekend. But if there's nothing to cheer for, like they're not just screaming at the top of their lungs the whole game. So anyway, yeah, I didn't expect it to go like that. I put a bet on Miami that morning. I picked Miami in our the Friday show that we did like right before the game happened. I expected Miami to win. I wasn't even going to be shocked if Miami won kind of going away by like 10 or 14. Certainly didn't expect it to go like that. Like Mertz looked terrible. He looks like he's regressed from year 1 to year 2. Florida's offensive line is terrible. Their effort is terrible. Their defense never, and I didn't love Florida's defensive line, but like obviously Miami's offensive line is probably the best in the conference. Ward just looked so relaxed. He just looked like he just didn't care about anything. Florida special teams was really good. That's about it. Like everything else was just trash. So Napier wasn't even good. I think some of Napier's scripted stuff has been pretty good in the past. And Guidry came out and said like, yeah, we knew what plays they were going to run. But like Florida scored 14 on Georgia early last year. Like it wasn't going to surprise me if it was like a 14-10 game or 17-14 game at halftime. And then Miami kind of put it on late. I was shocked by how bad Florida looked, how good Miami looked. I'll give credit both ways. But yeah, I didn't expect it to go like that for sure.
TJ, my question for you is do you think the offensive line at Florida is a project moving forward, or do you think they're still developing that project moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a project, it's like a D in school, right? Like it's not very good. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like they need to just move to young guys and let the young guys take their lumps and put in some of the guys because they've recruited the position halfway decently, not like an elite level at all, but they flipped a kid from Florida State, Rod Kearney, who they like a lot. Like they've gotten some good pieces. And so like they probably just need to go that way. They started that Waits kid. He's not very good. Florida State's offensive line is terrible. And they have the highest rated guard based on PFF through week 1 in Richie Leonard, and so like the guy that had the most snap, and Florida fans were telling you, oh, well, he's terrible. They don't need him. I spoke with somebody that covers Florida and they're like, no, he's terrible. They won't miss him. And he's the best player on Florida State's offensive line right now. And so, yeah, like it's a project that they're failing at, and they got 2 coaches. And somehow that's not helping. It's the weirdest thing in the world to me. They invest so much time, effort, money, resources into that offensive line. And it is just, it's what's going to hold their team back. I mean, Mertz's deep ball is not good. They're running back. They lost ETN and stuff. Like there's other problems too. But that offensive line, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a project, but I don't even know what direction they end up going with it.
TJ, what's your perspective right now on Mike Norvell? I saw a tweet on social media stating someone said Mike Norvell is on the hot seat. I disagree. I believe he got a contract extension as well, kind of like that Jimbo Fisher situation at Texas A&M, where you got to drop some money to get the buyout. But I think this is a marriage with Florida State that you got to let grow. You got to give them time. There's going to be good times and bad times, right? But I think to have an established head coach at a university is a must present day college football. What are your things? What are your thoughts about Norvell at the moment?
Yeah. I don't think he's on the hot seat at all. In fact, I mean, they're not going to, but they could go 0-12 and he's not getting fired. I don't see that. I mean, maybe if you lose the locker room and you've got stuff going, maybe he's not getting fired. He's built up enough equity over the last couple of years. Part of the reason I think Florida State's struggling right now is because they went all in last year to try and win it all. And had Jordan Travis's leg not snapped in half on national TV, they probably would have had a great chance against Michigan, right? Alabama took them to overtime and you had freaking me out there throwing the ball. I think Milroe had like 70 yards passing or something ridiculous. So I think they could have matched up okay with Michigan, and I think they'd have matched up fine in the national championship had they made it there. So Florida State, I don't want to say they neglected everything else, but they made an all-in run. They made we're going all in. And so by doing that, some of their NIL allocation resources were paying guys to come back, right? It's a little bit different than what Miami did this year, where they kind of went all in and they used a lot of pieces that they homegrown. They used some new NIL pickups like Martinez and Ward and stuff, the wide receiver from Houston. They've done it differently, but Florida State doing that, they use a lot of NIL resources on, big time portal acquisitions like Keon Coleman and stuff like that. And then they got a lot of guys to come back, right? They got Jared Verse to come back and not go in the first or second round the year before. They got a couple corners to come back. They got a couple of running Trey Benson to come back and Johnny Wilson to come back and those guys to not go to the draft. And so by doing that, I mean, your NIL budget for your roster is only so much every year. And so that wasn't spent on, I think it limited them some in recruiting. I think it limited them some in what they could get for 2-year transfers and stuff. And so they had to go back to the portal this year to kind of replace all those guys that they lost. And I think they've missed some in the portal. I think some of their portal guys they weren't as good this year. I mean, DJ being kind of probably the first one of that group. And so, yeah, I think, but all that said, it's not understandable, but you're kind of looking at it well, I kind of see why you're in this situation. You pushed all your chips to the table in the middle of the table last year. And but yeah, no, he's fine. There's no hot seat. There's no chance. It will get uncomfortable. I think what he'll need to do at the end of the year is just absolutely overhaul his staff. He'll need to make some staff changes, things that people have been saying for a while he needed to do. There's a guy coaching linebackers that also coached for you guys and for UF at one point that probably needs to hit the road. And there's some other staff changes. There's a guy coaching wide receivers that a lot of people aren't thrilled with the development at that position. And so I think, they go 3-9 or they go 6-6 or whatever it ends up being. I think there's going to be a pretty big cry for him to overhaul the staff. Now, if he doesn't do that and he runs back into another year, then I think you start to say, all right, well, these are your boys you're riding with. So you're going down with the ship. If you rehaul your staff, you almost get brand new favor again. You kind of get and Mario did that in year one, right? Went out and got it, or after year one, I'm sorry. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the answer. You need to upgrade some of the coaching around you, some of the recruiting around you, and you get kind of to hit that reset button.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Look, I love Randy Shannon. I really do. Local guy from Miami, but college football is modernized. It's a different ball game. There's a lot of younger guys out there that can probably, dial up a nice defense, right? Coach up personnel group, be on the road, recruiting left and right in this modern day college football. TJ, I've been watching college football. I was born in 94, so probably 2000 when I was the earliest I could remember. This is a new college football day. This is a different college football we've ever seen before. I've ever seen before. Do you like this whole NIL transfer portal stuff? I mean, genuinely, because I don't really like it. It's benefiting Miami right now and other programs. Everyone's doing it, but genuinely, I don't like it. And I think it's one of the reasons why Nick Saban retired as well.
Yeah, it's a situation where I think the players deserve to get paid, but I don't love the way that NIL is happening right now. First of all, I think it's dumb. All right. And I support Florida State's NIL, right? I give every month. And so I'm not, Florida State fans that catch this or Miami fans should be donate. I think you should,
You're the bag man.
donate to Canes Connection, right? Like you should be supporting. If you hate the NIL, then support the boosters, right? Like give back to the school, do something to support because you're getting free entertainment every Saturday by watching it. So you should support your program. All that said, I hate the idea that like the common guy like me, who maybe I work a 9 to 5, maybe I'm a teacher, maybe I do this, maybe I'm a police officer, whatever. The common guy, the 9 to 5 guy, is the one that's being asked to fund these college athletes playing football, which I don't have a problem with the athletes getting paid. That's not my gripe. It's the fact that there are billion-dollar TV contracts that the players should be sharing that revenue. And I know that that's coming, but NIL is not going away when that gets here. It's the fact that that should be the money paying these players, not your common Joe that's making $60,000 to $80,000 a year and having to give money so that this kid can drive a Lambo. Like that's just dumb to me. Like I don't think that it should be on our backs. Now, all that said, my check still catches every month with the battle's end. I got no issue supporting because I want to win. But I don't necessarily think that it's my responsibility to do that. I don't think that that's my job. And so, yeah, I don't love that. I don't love the ability to go portal to portal to portal to portal. People say, oh, well, coaches can lead. No, they can't. They have buyouts. They have to pay money if they're going to, or the new school has to pay money to get them out of a contract if they want to, buyouts work both ways, right? You fire a coach, or if you want to hire somebody away, you have to pay that buyout. And so coaches can't do that, right? Or there's some penalty that someone has to pay if you want to do it. So again, is it a bad thing if a kid has a terrible experience, or if he's got a sick family member, or he's just homesick and he's depressed and has mental health issues and needs to transfer home? No, absolutely not. I think the player should have that freedom. Yes. We should probably reel it back in a little bit from being able to go to 5 different schools in 5 different years. But that's just my opinion, right? Like so transfer portal in itself, not a bad thing. NIL, the players getting paid, not necessarily a bad thing to me. It's the way that we do it. And the problem really is the NCAA, because Saban requested stuff like that. Well, I heard an interview with Steve Spurrier not too long ago where he said, I was asking in 2008 for these guys to get paid because their stipend money was like $63 a week. And he's like, I've got Tim Tebow and I'm handing him $63 and he's making more money for us than I am. Like Tim Tebow was putting more butts in the seats than Urban was. Sorry. And so he mentioned Tebow with it, but anyway, it's something that was asked for a long time. And the NCAA didn't ever want to share their revenue because of course they didn't. Who would want to give up money? And so that's what brought about NIL. That's what's brought about the portal. And, so yeah, we can thank the almighty NCAA for it, I suppose.
TJ, in your opinion, the trenches, of course. I mean, that I'm a big trench guy. I'm a big trench bully guy. How much do you feel that impacts the NIL compared to other positions? I mean, because you got to have the bullies, right? You got to have the interior line. You got to have the offensive line, the defensive line. Do you feel that those guys are getting their honest share of the NIL?
Yeah, I honestly, I do. Especially depending on what position you play, right? Like guard's a little easier than tackle, right? But like an elite tackle, like it just came out. Florida State lost out on him. Josh Petty going to Georgia Tech and making $800,000. He's not even going to play. Maybe at Georgia Tech, but he wasn't even going to play next year at Florida State. Like he's not. He's got all the upside in the world, but he was not going to be physically ready. And I'm not even convinced he plays next year at Georgia Tech. They're paying him $800,000 to come and be developed to maybe play the next year. So yeah, I think if you're an elite talent, if you're a bully on the, I mean, and you look at what some of these defensive ends make. I can only imagine what Ruben Baines' NIL contract was. I know what Jared Verch's was. Yeah, these guys are getting taken care of for sure. But yeah, like now, if you're a 3rd string defensive tackle, if you're a 2nd string guard on the offensive line, yeah, you're getting a little smaller salary, I'm sure. But yeah, I do think they take care of those premium. Yeah, it's the same as in NFL, right? The premium positions are getting paid. Quarterback, defensive back, defensive end, offensive tackle, elite wide receiver. All of those positions are getting taken care of for sure.
How much do you feel edge rushers are getting prioritized between the interior rushers? You know, because I mean, we both know that interior rush is just as vital as that outside rush. Do you think outside rush guys are getting a little more attention, or do you think the inside guys are getting the fair share?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of look to the NFL, right? And what's happening in the NFL is probably what's happening here. When was the last time you saw a defensive tackle go top 5, in the NFL draft? And so based on that, they're getting paid a little bit less than your very best edge rusher. So yeah, I don't know this for verified fact. I don't know what Braden Fisk's NIL contract was, but it would shock me if Jared Verse didn't get paid more than Braden Fisk last year. As good as both of them are, and as good as both of them are expected to be starting for the Rams this year. But it would surprise me, right? And so, yeah, I think the edge rushers are taken care of a little bit more. But you're right. Like an elite defensive tackle, like Braden Fisk got offers from USC, Notre Dame, he got some big time offers to go play other places coming out of Western Michigan, and he picked Florida State. Like, he certainly was paid handsomely. I don't know that it was the same as a first round draft pick at defensive end.
TJ, college football has just started. People are already crossing out teams in the ACC. First week of college football, True Colors show. We're entering the second week. I'm sure your preseason predictions were a little bit different from week one, and it'll change every week as well. Where do you see the ACC right now? Because I told you before we got on the show, I still think it's wide open. It's up for grabs. What's your perspective about the ACC? There's no Coastal or Atlantic anymore, keep in mind.
Yeah, so wide open, I think, for the number 2 spot. Like, it would shock me. And I know they haven't played an ACC game yet, and I'm maybe anointing them a little too early. But just the way the rest of the conference looked. Virginia Tech supposed to be a sleeper, and they lose to Vanderbilt. Clemson, good defense. I have no confidence that Cade Klubnik can do much. Now, they won't play a team that's as good as Georgia this year, so that will help them some. To me, it feels like Miami and Clemson in the ACC championship at this point. But I'm not super confident in Clemson. NC State, we'll know more about them after they play Tennessee this weekend. But I'm not confident that NC State beats Clemson like I maybe was earlier in the year. I'm certainly not confident that Florida State beats Clemson. So, my guess would be that Miami's the 1 seed, Clemson's the 2 seed, and we'll get kind of a rematch of 2017. Is that what that was? And honestly, if you had to ask me right now, I'd say it probably goes the other way. But what I am interested to see is Miami as good as they showed on Saturday, right? Are they that good? Is Florida that bad? Was Miami just incredibly hot? Miami may do this a little this year. Now, I do think I liked your clip at the very beginning of the Tech guy. I do think Miami's schedule is very favorable, right? I would be shocked if they lose any of their next 5 games, right? FAMU, Ball State, USF, Virginia Tech. They need to win these games that they've got coming up. The middle half of the schedule has always been what's most important to me about Miami. The playing at Louisville, playing Florida State, then playing at Georgia Tech 2 weeks later. To me, that's always been if you were going to drop any, it'd be in those 3, because I don't think they lose anything late. And if they do, then you're like, all right, well, there's that classic Mario game that we were hoping wouldn't happen this year, right? And so to me, it's Miami should be really good for the first 6 games. They've got a tough stretch of 3 and 4. But I'd be pretty surprised at this point if Miami didn't make the ACC championship game. And then I guess Clemson's just too much talent for me to pick anybody else.
Yeah, it's going to be a real interesting season. The ACC, it's a jungle out there right now. So I still think maybe a two-loss conference loss team can still get into the title game. Hey, 1 week at a time. And like you mentioned, middle of the regular season for Miami is interesting. We go to Cal Berkeley, we got Virginia Tech. We play USF in Tampa. That one, to me, I'm circling that one. I'm going to get a little nervous about that game. Maybe that's PTSD for being a Miami Hurricanes fan, unfortunately. Hey, that's just how things go nowadays as a Canes fan. And I still think, regardless of where Florida State is, like last year, Florida State went undefeated. Miami put in Emory Williams. Dude, that was a dogfight in Tallahassee. That was a very close game. So, again, with those rivalry games, you never know what could happen. That's the beauty of college football. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I think you're right. I think I got Clemson, Miami top 2, and then that 3 and 4 spot. I thought Virginia Tech was a sleeper. We'll see. They're returning a lot of starters, so maybe Vanderbilt's the gym. The SEC, I doubt it. We'll see what happens. And NC State came in with a lot of noise, but Grayson McCall looks awful. But we'll see what happens there. TJ, we got a few minutes left before we let you go. What's your overall prediction of the Miami Hurricanes moving forward? Maybe your season prediction has changed. Maybe it hasn't. Where do you see Miami's path moving forward?
Yeah, so I think I had 10-2 before the season started. So not too much different than that. I think I'd probably say 11-1, right? I thought the games that they had the biggest chance of losing were Florida, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Florida State, and Georgia Tech. Like I thought those, like if they were going to lose one, it'd be one of those 5, right? Or two, if I couldn't imagine a way they lose to anybody else, right? Well, after seeing them beat Florida, after seeing what Florida State has looked like, and you're right, a rivalry thing gets weird. You certainly I saw a stat. This rivalry, Florida State, Miami, has been a 1-score game 70% of the time, which is crazy. Florida State has been like less than 50. Like it feels like we're always blowing each other out. Like it's never. There are some good games. Don't get me wrong, but very rarely is that one. And that's what happens when you have Jameis one year and Tebow the next year. You're just going to have a lot of that when those guys aren't going up against each other. But man, I remember even we had the blowout 2 years ago, and then you guys blew us out in 2020. But even like 2018 with Willie. That was a 1-score game. We had the big lead, and you guys came back. And you just mentioned it last year. There should have been no reason that Miami was close. And it was a 7-point game, and they had the ball late. So this rivalry does stay close. I'd be pretty. I wouldn't pick Florida State in this one yet. But if you told me like, oh, it's a 10-point game or something like that, I certainly wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, I'd move to 11-1, and they're going to be a favorite in every single game that they play. Like I can't imagine a game that they're not a favorite in the rest of the way. Louisville. No, because Miami's going to be undefeated going into that, I think. So, yeah, I think they're – unless maybe Georgia Tech's still undefeated at that point and Georgia Tech's taking down a top 10 Notre Dame, then maybe they could be a dog on the road in Atlanta. I don't think that's realistic. So, yeah, I think Miami's a favorite in every game they play. I'd say 11-1. They make the conference championship, and they probably win that too. I mean, we'll see what Clemson looks like when they're not playing the best team in the country, to see if they're a serious competitor. And I don't know who that loss would be. I think it's hard to go undefeated. It's really hard to go predict 12-0. And so maybe, Miami gets trapped up against a team, on the road against Louisville. Maybe it's the rivalry against Florida State. Maybe Georgia Tech is for real and can get them a second year in a row. But I don't know who the loss will be, but I'd say 11-1 would be where I sit right now, which earns them probably the home team in the ACC championship with that record.
TJ, we just added the quarterback Neil to our playbook this year, so maybe we're being more creative on offense. So maybe that'll help us out with a win or two. But yeah, look, I love college football. I love it more than the NFL. The passion, right? Expect the unexpected. That is college football.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's why we're so passionate about this sport. TJ, small promise. If Miami is undefeated by the time we get the Florida State Seminoles at Hard Rock Stadium, would you do a pregame show with us?
Oh, I'll do it either way. You could lose every game or you can win every game. Either way, just let me know.
TJ, thanks a ton for coming on tonight's show. We really appreciate it. Where could the good people find you?
Yeah, on Twitter is TJ_Pittinger, just like my name is spelled right there. And then on YouTube, you can check out Double Fries No Slaws, my kind of FSU baby. And then I do a national show called College Football Addiction that I point and laugh at Miami and Florida a little bit less. I try to be a little less biased on that. So yeah, come check us out over there. It's crazy. I had before I did a Florida, the show you were talking about, this blew my mind because this would never happen on Twitter, but I'll find the screenshot. Oh no, I posted. It's on my Twitter somewhere. I 2 comments back to back on that YouTube. One was it said like, hey, I'm a Florida grad from 1984. This is the most unbiased. Like, this is the best preview I've heard. And then the very next one was a Miami fan. Hey, even though you're a Florida State fan, and I was like, I just think I broke the internet. Like I broke the matrix, like with a Florida fan, a Miami fan agreeing on a Florida State fan's channel. Like I was just like, I can retire at this point. So anyway, yeah. So a testament to I can take the garnet gold color glasses off at a time or two.
Gotta love it, guys. TJ Pittinger, thanks again, man. I think you do a great job. And again, man, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, boys. I appreciate it. Good luck this year. Not
All
not
right.
in not the last week of October, but good luck the rest of the way.
We appreciate that, TJ.
See you
Take
guys.
it easy. All right, everyone. That was TJ Pittinger, diehard Florida State Seminoles fan. Pretty big on social media as well, but really appreciate him coming on the scoop. Ross, anything else you have left before we wrap it up tonight's show?
No, I just love having TJ on, man. I mean that's one of the guys that fires up our fan base. He knows how to get under our skin. he knows how to work the angle, And we just saw though at the end of the day, he respects what we're doing, and that's what it's all about. You know what? If FSU does well, you know what? Hey. FSU does well. If Florida does well, Florida does well. If Miami does well, hell freaking yes.
The thing people need to realize, Ross, as well, is you want Florida to do well. You want Florida State to do well because of strength of schedule.
Yes.
If you were here on earlier, I put on blast this individual who predicted Miami to lose like a bunch of games. He said we had an easy non-conference schedule. If Miami were to be represented in the college football playoffs and they were a bubble team, like college basketball teams are in March, they will look at a strength of schedule compared to an SEC program that is in the trenches week in and week out. The SEC program that's 10-2, or the 11-1 Miami team that didn't win the ACC and doesn't get an automatic bid, probably will be left out. That's probably a factual statement, unfortunately. This is
no
where
matter what,
college football.
It's going to be a tough game no matter what, opening that up. Because that team that wants to open it up is going to want to prove they belong.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, really appreciate everyone's time tonight. I'm going to drag Ross to go live with me before the FAMU game. He doesn't know it. I'm putting him on the spot right now. So you got to commit to it live on air, Ross. But guys, thanks for tuning in on the scoop on the U. We were gone for a little while. Now we're back for good. So really appreciate everyone's time, and always all about the U. Go Canes.
Go Canes.